Welcome back to another Ping Pong Flicks Tinfoil edition. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a tidbit and tinfoil for this one. So I'm going to keep my hat off because a lot of this news that I'm going to about tell you is actually real. But the other parts are going to be a little bit tinfoil. Today, a fan spotted a Wonder Woman promo at the licensing expo in Las Vegas. It is a giant Wonder Woman 84 with a golden Wonder Woman played by Gal Gadot right in the center. Now, it doesn't really show you much, but it does have that feel of the 1980s look about them. But it really brought back to the whole question for me about whether or not Wonder Woman 1984 is a sequel. I'm going to read you a couple things from an article back in the days on July 21st of 2018 when this movie was going to be released in November of 2019. Gal Gadot wanted to reiterate that this is not a sequel. She said this: "The way we look at this is not a sequel. It's a new chapter. It's a new story." Patty Jenkins then jumped in and says, "I never want to do more of anything for the wrong reason. I don't want to go to that place of how do you keep it going and cash in my head. I have these characters that I love and this world that I love, and we can make a whole new movie that's completely unique and as strong as the first one. Of course I want to do that, but it's not more of anything, even though it's evocative of everything that happened to the first one." And so these words really got people scratching their heads on whether or not this was a sequel. By all standards, it's a movie that takes place in the 80s, which is after the years in the World War years of the first one, so it is a sequel and actually has Gal Gadot reprising her role as Wonder Woman. The questionable person in here, the character that's coming back, is Steve Trevor, and Patty Jenkins promises when you realize how he's back, it will all make sense. Now, that is very interesting logic there, meaning we're thinking about how he's going to come back from the dead and everything so and so, but there are two kind of tinfoily questions that we wanted to bring up here. The first one I wanted to get out of the way is that it's quite possibly Wonder Woman 1984 is essentially not a reboot, but a retelling of the same Wonder Woman story for the World War I days, but set in the 1980s. Meaning this is a Steve Trevor, but not Steve Trevor from the World War. And this is the same Gal Gadot Wonder Woman, but it's not the same story from the first Wonder Woman. Meaning we'll retell that Wonder Woman story with the same cast and crew members from the first movie, but in the Wonder Woman 1984 setting, with making it more like the Wonder Woman TV series as we've seen in some of the behind the scenes sets. But that is pretty far-fetched and pretty out there, and could probably anger a lot of fans who really come to love the first Wonder Woman movie. And to actually essentially see this as a reboot will be quite something that quite disappointing for a lot of people. But it would explain Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot saying it's a new story. It's a completely different story. It's a new, almost like they're saying it's a new take of the whole Wonder Woman story from the first one. But we'll see how it actually turns out. The other thing that has been talked about before is Grace Randolph's theory, or from her sources that are telling her that Wonder Woman 1984 is a reboot, and the decision for it to go from November 2019 to June of 2020 is to give the studio opportunities to recast Batman, to recast Superman. Now, since that video was made quite a long time ago, I've decided to revisit it again, and it's pretty interesting. And if you go back and watch the video, some of the things have come to pass, including the recasting of Batman, and now Batman is now being played by Robert Pattinson. And some of the things that she included in there kind of sort of make sense. Not the Flashpoint idea, but in the way where they're placing this movie in June of 2020, which is coming right after Joker, which is set in the 80s. Joker set in the 80s with a younger Bruce Wayne, then when Wonder Woman 1984 comes out, by this time, they've already started working on Robert Pattinson's Batman, which is set in the 90s. When you look at the timeline where you see a boy Bruce Wayne in the 80s in the Joker movie, then you get Robert Pattinson starting in the 90s. Of course, that's 10 years, so I don't think he can grow that old in 30 years. So we'll have to see actually how that actually plays out, or essentially Joker's still a Black Label film. But it kind of gives a little bit of more substance to Grace Randolph's theory that Wonder Woman 1984 is essentially a way of reshooting, of retelling the whole Batman Superman story, so that they can have new actors and actors play Batman and Superman, and maybe even Flash and Cyborg and all that, which is really going to be very devastating for a lot of Snyderverse fans like myself. But if this is kind of like going in the direction of what Grace Randolph had said, which is kind of interesting and kind of scary at the same time. Now we all know from Mark Hughes' little article in the Forbes that just recently came out that actually give a little bit more credence to that theory as well, seeing that how he's saying that they're slowly rebooting the universe, but they're possibly keeping Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman for a few more movies, and Jason Momoa, since that did well, he's going to have his own universe with a few more movies. But they are going to go ahead and do Supergirl, which is in Q1 of 2020. Start shooting for that, which also brings more credence to Grace Randolph's theory, except not Superman, but instead of doing Superman, they're going to do Supergirl instead. Now, this is all interesting stuff, and I haven't even gotten to whether or not in the movie they are going to bring back Steve Trevor in the way of doing like a Flashpoint. Instead of saving Barry's mom, they save Steve Trevor instead, and essentially doing a soft reboot in that. I'm not even going to go there. But using Wonder Woman 1984 in a way, whatever story that's going to take place, and essentially to explain why Robert Pattinson is the new Batman and not Ben Affleck, and also there's going to be a Supergirl instead of a new Superman. I don't know how this is all going to play out, but it's putting the Mark Hughes Forbes idea together with Grace Randolph's idea. It's starting to look a little bit fishy, and it's starting to kind of worry me a little bit, essentially because I'm such a huge Snyderverse fan, and trying to explain it that way. We could still go back to Robert Pattinson being the younger version of Ben Affleck's Batman. I would totally love that. But, we got to keep our minds open to the idea that some other plan is working in the background. So what do you think? Do you think Wonder Woman 1984 is going to be a retelling of Wonder Woman? Or is it going to be the soft reboot that Grace Randolph actually alluded to a year ago? Let me know down below. What do you think? Until then, see me next time on the next Ping Pong Flicks Tinfoil edition.